Thank you for tuning back into the channel. I'm sorry for the late upload. I have been kind of having some technical difficulties recently, but I really want to get back into it, and so here I am, despite how cold it is outside. And they say be careful what you wish for because you never know what you're gonna get at. And here I was, kind of hoping for some more Christmassy type weather, winter wonderland type stuff. And the moment it hits, it's freezing out. And so there I am, just thinking, what the heck did I wish for? So yeah, it was really weird. And one of the things that really, kind of stinks is that, oh, look, it's actually 6 degrees above. We're gonna eat. It's actually kind of like that down in Texas, too. And that's what kind of interests me because, I've been to Texas. It doesn't normally get that cold down there. So seeing it in 20-degree weather, that is really out there. And it's just blowing my mind. Anyway, so today for the video, I kind of wanted to just start off the new year with a kind of looking back through the years and just talking about stuff that a lot of us might remember from our childhood. And so I guess the way I'm gonna kind of do this is go make a little bit of a mini series of it. And the topic I'm going to be talking about today is Pokemon. Now, like I said, it would take me 2 hours to kind of go over even more so to go over every little nook and cranny that I could about Pokemon. But so I'm gonna make it into like separate videos. But I kind of wanted to do Gen 1 and Gen 2 together. Not only because they were released on the same console, but because they kind of tie in together in that regard. I think it's actually one of the only what's the word I'm looking for? Gen 1 and Gen 2 are kind of unique in the fact that you can actually interconnect with the other previous generation and, kind of travel between the two regions. So that's kind of why I wanted to go about it this way, just to make it a little bit easier than trying to make one for each different one. But to start off, we're going to start off with the original generation, Gen 1, and that would be the Kanto region. And, for a lot of us who remember it being a part of our childhood, um, it was really big on TV when it first came out. And, it was really exciting. Um, I even remember the commercial for the original generation. You had the bus driver and the Pokemon getting on the bus and what have you. Um, it's really unique in the fact that it kind of not only introduced the formula for Pokemon, but it also introduced a formula where you had to actually interact with friends. It wasn't just a one player versus a computer. It was you had to actually talk to your friends in order to actually complete the main objective, which would be, of course, completing the Pokédex. And, it's really interesting to see that because up until that point, a lot of these adventure games are solo games. You didn't have trading cables, or at least not that I remember. And this is just all from my knowledge because, like I said, this happened. Pokemon released around the same time I was born, so I don't remember much of the video games. And actually, I started on the anime, so I didn't actually experience the first gen games, as it were. The first experience I had with Gen 1 actually was Fire Red and Leaf Green, which were remakes of the original series. So, um, like I said, these were, and, Pokemon cards and stuff like that were, like, hot as fire back then. I mean, you'd see kids on the playground trading each other for Super Rare Charizard, or, it was just one of those things where back then, they were flying off the shelves so fast they would be on the shelves, and the moment they hit the shelves, they would disappear. I guess the way you could best describe it is it was like, and I remember the big three back from when I was a kid. It was Beyblade, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon. And, or sorry, Digimon. I always get those two confused. I don't know why. Anywho, um, it was weird seeing a game that just comes out of nowhere and all of a sudden it becomes this huge major hit. And, I remember the Gen 1 games because I actually did get a chance to play through a copy of Yellow, and um, it was really weird to say the least. Because, like I said, this is a game that I'm not familiar with. I don't know how the formula works or what have you, but it was. And one of the things I loved about the original games is that feeling of, okay, what's it was like an adventure, but one that you've never been on before because you didn't know what was going to happen next. And yeah, there were your set, just like every video game, you have your big bad boss to beat, and you have your certain goals you have to reach. But it gave you a little bit more freedom than what you're normally, like with take Mario for example. You're just jumping on turtles, and it's just linear in that regard. But with Pokemon, you kind of have that little more freedom of experience, exploring, as it were, and that was really, uh, you know, it was really nice in the earlier generations because you got to feel like, okay, well, there's you have a map, but you can go to find little hidden places like, um, I remember one of the things that I really liked from the original games is the abandoned mansion in what was on the Blaine's Island. I don't remember for Cinnabar. Cinnabar. That's the island. Cinnabar. I like the fact that they had more open areas to explore like that, and I think what really, really, really made it more rewarding to play through is the fact that the legendaries weren't just. And this is a complaint I'm gonna have about the. It's not really a complaint, just an issue that I have with the later games. Legendaries you actually had to work for back in the day. Like you couldn't just they weren't just something that popped out of nowhere and automatically said that you were worthy. You actually had to go make your way through a maze or something, find it, and then try to capture it with a Pokeball. And that's really evident in the legendary birds of the Kanto region, Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno. And this is kind of a really weird topic to talk about because I wouldn't normally say this, but Team Rocket was a evil team that actually really, really went into depth with their like it kind of went about it in a roundabout way, but you could find traces of them all over the place, like the abandoned mansion, um, Silphco. They were kind of like everywhere where something big happens. So it's kind of nice to see that you don't just have this um, group that you're trying to stop from taking over the world. They actually have some sort of depth to their character and what have you. And again, that's going to play a lot into the topic of Gen 2. But, I remember a lot of the rumors going around. There was the Mew under the truck rumor, where if you went to Viridian, or not Viridian, sorry, Vermilion City, and you used strength on the truck, you could find a Mew there. It was just one of those things where, looking back, you're like, I can't believe I believed that then. But one of the things you got to remember is we did not have Google like we have it now. The internet wasn't a thing. Anything we learned, we took at face value because we didn't have any way to fact check that. And one of the things that made it really fun is that, like, for example, when Pokemon the first movie came out, if you went to see that movie, or Pokemon the movie 2000, you could get some free cards with the ticket that you bought. And that's why you see a lot of kids that were really excited to go see the movie. And again, I'm going to point this out because it's really hard to talk about because from my perspective, I actually started out with the anime. So it wasn't like I just jumped to the games and then waited for the anime to come out. I watched the anime first, then jumped into the games. So for me, it was really cool to see some of those characters that I saw on television in the actual game. Now, uh, Pokemon has been a huge part of my life, and I think I can say that for a lot of millennials and people my age because it was more than just a game that you had to beat. It was more than a part of our childhood really. it was a game where you actually got to connect with the character that you were playing with. You got invested into the adventure, and it felt like you were actually training the Pokemon. So, um, it's just one of those games that's kind of like a one in a million. And, you wouldn't know that unless you were actually experiencing it for yourself. So, with that being said, it's just like, wow, what an experience to play through. And it's interesting to say that because Generation 1 has got to be one of the most revered and used generations that the Pokemon Company and Game Freak have utilized throughout there. Like, if you've played any Pokemon game other than the originals, you would see that there's at least one remake or at least one Easter egg of the original generation in each video game. So, it's just one of those things where you take a look at how Pokemon has evolved throughout the years, and you're really amazed at how far that we've come. I mean, back then it was only 151 Pokemon, and even then, it was really difficult to try to capture them all because, again, it was the first game of its kind. You couldn't just capture them all in one go. You would have to, interact with friends, which is kind of. It was a game that kind of made it more valuable to you to use a game link cable because back then you had to trade with your friends in order to complete from different versions in order to complete the Pokédex. And it's just amazing to see how far we've come from 151 to almost no over 1,000 now. With Gen 9 releasing, it's over 1,000 now. And it just makes me really want to take a look back and see, you know, just reminisce about how it was in the good days when you were trading Pokemon cards with your friends and talking about where to find certain Pokemon. And um, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Back then, it stirred a lot of controversy in the fact that people, especially in a lot of conservative households, thought Pokemon was demonic and they thought it was something that kids shouldn't watch. But from the perspective of a kid who grew up with it, it brought friends closer together more than anything else. Like it had the opposite of effect of what parents thought it was going to do. And um, even when it comes to the anime, there are lessons that you can take away from that. Like the anime, like a lot of adults think it's just some cartoon, but looking at a lot of the earlier seasons, and especially when I'm looking at the Integral League, a lot of the lessons that you learn through those episodes, you can really take home with you. And it's just amazing to me that we're we're almost in Gen 10, and I didn't think I'd live. I didn't think in my lifetime I would ever see the end of the original anime because it just seems like it all happened so quickly. But yeah, like I said, the games themselves, they were just amazing in the fact that they were ahead of their time. You got to do more than just walk around and defeat the enemy. You got to explore. You got to play mini games, and it was just more about exploring too. It was about collecting and trying to make sure you can catch all 151. So if you're asking me personally, I think Gen 1 was one of the most innovative, or Pokemon itself as a franchise is one of the. I don't want to say it's the best because it's kind of gotten a little bit. It's kind of lost track of where it used to be in recent years, but it definitely was into what's the word I'm looking for? Um, it was ahead of its time. I'll just leave it at that because there was a lot of stuff, and this was even before you got into natures and abilities and all that stuff. This is just when you were just um, battling for attack and special attack. Like, take the psychic type for example. That one was in a really broken type because it had no weaknesses and was super effective to ghost. So it's just one of the things that you really have to look at and be amazed at. And getting into that further, I want to get into Gen 2, which would be the Johto games. They weren't so much as a remake, mind you, as they were just kind of the next step in the game. And that's kind of something that's unique among the Pokemon franchise, because a lot of games will just go straight to the next generation without really finishing any loose ends. But with Johto, it felt like you could, you know, it was kind of like a next step in your adventure from the original games. And this is actually the games where I started with, because I got Silver on Game Boy Color, and it was the first time I actually got to physically play the game. Now, Gen 2 was kind of interesting because even though it was supposed to be the next game in the franchise, there weren't that many unique Pokemon as far as separating Gen 1 and Gen 2. Like, a majority of them you can only find after you beat the main game. And I think that's one of the major complaints in the main Pokemon community is the lack of variety when it comes to Gen 2 Pokemon. And I think they fixed that a lot in the remakes, Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But even so, you've kind of just got to think about, you know, why was there such a lack of new Pokemon to be revealed? And here's the thing. Um, when Pokemon are revealing a new generation, what they'll typically do is they will like to sprinkle some new Pokemon in the next movie that's coming out and kind of give you a kind of a clue of what the next generation Pokemon are going to be like, but not without exactly revealing it. Um, but yeah, it was kind of weird in that regard because, like I said, um, unless but unless you're really looking hard, you won't find any Gen 2 Pokemon, or at least any of the good ones anyway, after you beat the main game. But one of the things that it did do well is introduce a day and night cycle. And it's really interesting because that kind of ties into one of the Gen 1 Pokemon, Eevee. Um, the way you evolved Eevee back in that generation is you had to level it up via day if you wanted it Espeon, or at night if you wanted an Umbreon. And I've never actually been able to personally achieve that, but that's the only way I knew how to back in the day. Um, and that day and night cycle really made it feel a little bit more realistic because you actually do have day and nights in real time. So if you synchronize your clock to the appropriate time, you could be playing at day or at night. Now, one of the disadvantages to the earlier generations is you didn't have the backlit screen. So if you wanted to play, you kind of have to get like one of the stands with the lights on it and attach it to your Game Boy or Game Boy Advance, whatever you're playing on. Um, and it was really challenging because you're dealing with a heavy light while trying to focus on the game. But like I said, for a lot of the things that this game didn't do, it did really well. Like I said, with going back to my statement about Team Rocket. Team Rocket was one of the groups I was more heavily focused on, and I think it's because it's like the original generation team of bad guys. But even then, you got what happens after Giovanni left Team Rocket, and you got to. It was kind of like I said, it was more like a next chapter in how you're going to go about these games afterwards. And I remember this being one of the more easier games, and maybe it's just because I got so used to the formula by then. But like I said, it's just one of those things where you get so used to what you're doing that it just becomes second nature to you. But in addition to the things that they added, I kind of like they added a little bit more mini games. Like for us that were around at that time, you remember how you were supposed to collect the apricorns, and then you go to a certain town, Mahogany Town, and you would have the person that would make you the Pokeballs with the apricorns that you collected. And I think out of all the Pokemon generations, this is one of the ones that had the most features added to it. Like you had the day and night cycle, you had the ability to save money with your parents. You got the bug catching tournament in Gen 2. It's just one of those things where it, there was a lot of content added that you got to enjoy more, and it made it feel like less like a one step process game, but stuff that you could do even after you beat the game. So Gen 2, I think Gen 2 was one of the first generations to have the legendary box art Pokemon, with them being Ho-Oh for gold and Lugia for silver. And so that's kind of where the theme began with legendary box art Pokemon. And that was something that was really exciting because, up until now, legendaries were kind of just, they weren't integral to the part of the story, but they weren't as big as when you got into the second generation and forward. So, it's just nice to see that they were giving more attention. And they even each had their own special event, like depending on which version you chose. Um, you could find Lugia in a cave, or you could find Ho-Oh at the Burn Tower. Um, so, it was kind of the first time where you could find legendaries, and there was an actual like way to like you needed something instead of them just being there. You could actually, like, I think it was a Silver Wing and Rainbow Ring sorry, Rainbow Wing and Silver Wing respectively. Um, and then you activate a sequence where you could, um, you get the legendary. And here's the thing about legendaries in Heart Gold and Soul Silver 2. They actually introduced one of the most um, annoying legendary methods of catching a Pokemon that I have ever known. And it kind of became as kind of like a mini trope. I'm talking about, of course, Entei, Raikou, and Suicune. Now, the designs themselves are not bad. My favorite was Suicune. I thought the legendary beasts were well designed. They were, cool to train. They had excellent moves. But the problem was, in order to catch them, you would have to be able to catch up with them because they ran away. And they would never stay in one place. So even if you did find them, you have to pray that they didn't run away during mid battle. Otherwise, you have to start over and try to find them all over again. And that was a huge hassle to anyone that's played those games. I mean, they rarely do that. I think there's only a handful of other legendaries that I can name that actually have that mechanic. But it was so frustrating to have to try to save before the game and then try to find them, because if they ran off, you would not know. And here's the other thing too. I think this game had the feature where if you got close enough to them, they would run into different areas. So not only did you have to track them down, you had to make sure you were able to get to them before they ran off again, which was really frustrating because at that point it's just like a game of tag, and they really made you work for those legendaries in Gen 2, I'm not gonna lie. Looking back through my first playthrough of Silver, I actually chose Chikorita, which is not one of the most popular um, options I know, but I just thought it was really cute, and I enjoyed training with my Chikorita and evolving it into Meganium. But it's just looking at these first two generations. You've got to respect how much hard work and dedication they put into those games to try to make them not only playable, but the fact that they were able to tie them together as well as they did. Um, and I just, it's just amazing to me that we've gone 2 decades almost since the release of the original games, and almost 30 now, and it just seems like time is flying so fast. And it really makes me look forward to what the Pokemon Company has in store for the future. I hope that they start to take a look at their old games again, because like I said, one of the problems in the newer games is that they don't pay enough attention to it, and they treat them more like a price tag than an actual experience. It kind of takes away from that element of, oh my gosh, I'm going on an adventure for the first time. And it's kind of why I liked Paldea's playthrough. If you've ever played Scarlet or Violet, it was a lot. It brought me back to the memories of going on my journey for the first time, and being able to choose my first starter Pokemon. It, yeah, there were some elements of the more recent games in it, but from the bottom of my heart, it felt like I was actually going on an adventure for the first time, and actually able to explore instead of just following one simple formula and just playing the same game in a different reskin. You know what I mean? Um, it is, being a Pokemon fan has meant more to me than anything else, aside from being married. Um, it's a defining character of who I am. I've learned so much from the anime and the games, and you take a look at these and you think they're just something to play and then discard when you're done with them. But if you look really hard and you take the time to actually scour about and play through them, you'll find that it's more than just a game. It's more than just an experience. And it brought friends together. Like I said, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There were a lot of people who didn't fit in that found this game and finally found something in common, and it's what brought friends together. It's a lifestyle, and I'm not going to it's there's a reason it's been going on as long as it has. So like I said, that's everything Gen 2 and Gen 1 did right. They made the first two games incredibly fun to play through. It was just amazing to be able to be there for the beginning and see how much has changed throughout the years. Um, it's one of the things that I miss. Having HMs and TMs and what have you. Just there's so many mechanics that I miss about the older generations that you don't get in a lot of later games, like being able to use an HM outside of battle, or fishing or what have you. But with that being said, I am extremely excited to be going over this new series of the Pokemon games. Next video, I will be. Blah. I am so sorry. I have not had caffeine in the. I'm going through a little bit of a caffeine break right now, and it is really affecting me, so I apologize if I stumble over my words. But, like I said, I'm really looking forward to doing these videos. My next video will be on Gen 3. I look forward to seeing you there. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, leave a comment telling me what your favorite Gen 1 starter or Gen 2 starter was. And hey, share with friends. The more the merrier. Like I said, this is just an interactive community, and I look forward to seeing the growth as the channel grows and what have you. Thank you for tuning in. That will be the humble house husband signing up for today. I will see you later. Have a good day.